paralyzed with fear. Cry ye out and cry. They are drunk, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yahweh has poured upon you the spirit of stupefaction, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets, the rulers, the seers have he filled, and the whole vision is become to you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that has learned, saying, read this, please. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that has not learned, saying, read this, please. And he saith, I am not learned. For as much as this people draw near me with their mouths and with their lips to honor me, but have removed their...
Good day, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Let's get continuing here in our study in Matthew. Excuse me. We're going to get right into it. So let's begin reading at the beginning of the chapter, just because it's a good setting for what comes next, and we want to keep it in context. And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding. And they would not come. Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then saith he to his servants, The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways, and gathered together as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. And he saith unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither, not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true, and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar, or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness, and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he saith unto them, Whose is the image and superscription? They say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. When they had heard these words, they marveled, and left him, and went their way. The same day came to him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moses said, If a man die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife, and raise up seed unto his brother. Now there were with us 7 brethren, And the first, when he had married a wife deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the seventh. And last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the seven? For they all had her. Jesus answered and said unto them, Ye do err, not knowing the Scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have ye not read that which was spoken unto you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. And when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine. But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, and saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words a little. I wish I'd gotten more sleep last night, or perhaps decided to take a nap today, but I feel the energy, and we have to cut this short, but that's all right. Not terribly short, but... Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. The second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, saying, What think ye of Christ? Whose son is he? They say unto him, The son of David. He saith unto them, How then doth David in spirit call him Lord, saying, The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou at my right hand, until I make thine enemies thy footstool. If David then called him Lord, how is he his son? And no man was able to answer him a word. Neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions. Very futile endeavor, apparently. You know, I was thinking as we read over that parable again, when I thought about bidding to the marriage, I thought of history since the destruction of Jerusalem. And you think about all of Christian history, how people got drawn into the church, bad and good. And all the villains in history in the name of Christianity. And I'm telling you, when the judge comes, and the resurrection, and there's resurrection in this, is all important. It is all tied together. Because in the resurrection, and in fact, a lot of this is very tied to the parable. Because immediately he talks about this, give to Caesar what is Caesar. And it's government. And it's human. It's more than government, but it's sort of like man and the authority of man. And to society, I suppose you could think of it as also, right? Because, Caesar is a part of something much bigger. Obviously, he was the emperor of the Roman Empire. Now, I mean, and you can imagine that, Christianity, the history of it is filled with villains, good and bad. But ultimately, in the end, how you behave underneath this, it matters. And I could Ananias and Sapphira, it was an example, to set before people. But he doesn't do that all the time because, like I said, they need to be. He wants them to have plausible deniability to do such foolishness. If that's what's in your heart, tempting God, fear a little, because there's much to fear. That's why the first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. Just like children, I mean, it's like, listen to your parents. That's what's the first and greatest commandment to a child? They don't even know what God is. How can they understand? But children, obey your parents. And parents, don't provoke your children to wrath. That's a very important thing. In all your discipline and all that, remember, it's not just, Jesus preached compassion, forgiveness, goodness, and severity. But the severity should be in relation to the severity of the offense. And he showed a lot of mercy even for great offenses. I suppose that's why Ananias and Sapphira were struck down, because lying to the Holy Spirit like that in such a public manner, that constitutes blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Sure, good enough. Sorry, rugs right out from under you. There are things that you cannot do. There are things men have done on this earth in the name of Christ that should not be done. So one of the things, as I read this, I thought, like they say, pray for our leaders. I don't like to say rulers, because we don't have rulers in this country. We're the rulers. We need the ones who need the prayer, because we're in trouble. Our country's in trouble. Should pray for the new president-elect, that he seemed to, I like the words of peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. And that's what our prayers should be, that we make peace, because there's a lot more wrong with this world than war, and it'd be good to make some peace. I know we can't make total peace until the Prince of Peace comes, but I'll tell you what, we ought to be doing, if God saves your life for something, then you should do what's right. Because remember what happened? Remember I talked about Josiah. Great king. God gave him a promise. God said, you live a charmed life. That's what they start thinking. That's what, like I talk about how Macbeth, same thing. You will die in peace. And then they go running off to war and start behaving, as if this is a blank check to do whatever you want to do. Let us sin the more that grace may abound. God forbid. Tempt not Christ, as they tempted. We could tempt too, because it's a sign of unbelief when we tempt God, in a sense. We're not. There's different kinds. Because like I said, throwing yourself off the temple. What is that? How is that unbelief? Well, in a sense, I think it's a failure to understand the nature of belief. As far as we believe in a particular God, the Lord thy God. There's a lot of critics of the Lord our God. One of the things that people always talk about is respect of persons. And one of the questions I've had thrown at me, I don't think it's a good argument, but I'm going to bring it up because it's been made, that the respect of the election, I almost said free will, but the election has some sort of problem with the idea of respect of persons. The election of God has nothing to do with the respect of persons. In fact, it is in the face of it. That's because, like I talk about Jacob and Esau. Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. Esau was the firstborn. He had all the I'm the guy, right? I'm the natural inheritor, the firstborn. That's what Jesus is, the firstborn, because it means I am the natural and rightful heir. That's the whole important thing about the story of Jacob, that he wasn't the rightful heir per se, but God loved him and hated his brother, because it's not about respect of persons. And it says that before they had done any good or evil, the children being not yet born. It's the antithesis of respect of persons. Respect of persons is to give someone respect based on things they necessarily haven't attained, but rather position. Or because there's someone, all men should be treated equally under the law, and respect of persons is the opposite of that. Where people start, it's like, well, this is a very important person. That's not the way the Bible preaches the idea of how people should be looked at. Ultimately, that's why, the poor, blessed are the poor. In the world, it's blessed are the rich, according to the ways of the world. I'll make you, Satan tries to make Jesus rich. I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world. Just bow down and worship me. And so that's one of the things about giving tribute to Caesar, because his image was on the coin. A lot of times it was like idolatry. There was a sort of a cult of Caesar. I don't know if it really developed in the time of the Gospels, actually, at that point. But there was a tendency among the heathen to regard their rulers as almost God, whereas among the Hebrews, at least according to the Bible, they did not see their kings as godlike. David, who is one of the most renowned kings, and the father, and the Messiah is the son of David, as they say in this chapter. But he is a very flawed character. And just like the apostles, very flawed characters. That's one of the things That's, there are unflawed characters in the Bible like Job, the righteous servant of God. And I look forward to doing that book. I plan on doing that next, I believe. Because I've never taught it line by line, and I'd like to do that. Because I think there's a lot to be learned there. That's the thing, a lot of people, it's a weird thing because they'll talk about the Bible being the Word of God, and they'll talk about Job being literally true or something like that. But they don't really want to talk about what's written there because they disagree with the other guys. And that's right, they're wrong. But to go through the arguments, I guess they don't trust their congregants to be sophisticated enough to, to sit and listen to something that's a little more in depth. And that may be true, because when you're taking in just good and bad, to go out into the highways. And it's interesting when it says the highways. I thought of all the Roman highways, right? The Romans paved the way for Christianity. One of the main ways Christianity spread was because of the Roman road systems. And it's interesting that, once again, just like in the book of Joel, he identifies the armies that destroy those wicked men as his army. Like Joel, my army, which I sent among you. He talked about the king of Babylon, my servant, because ultimately all things serve him, even Satan. The wicked have a purpose. In every house there are vessels, great and not so great. I've talked about this in the past. There are different kinds of vessels. There's toilets, right? There's something, not as the same as, I don't know. I'm not big into it's not like a sacred altar of incense in the temple. A very different kind of thing. It's profane. It's far from holy, far from the holy place. So there's this Caesar. Was it lawful to pay your taxes to Caesar? This is, of course, a very famous thing Jesus talked about. Why do you tempt me? Why do you test me? Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Because they want to catch him in his words. Because if on one hand, they despised the Roman occupation, and they despise. That's why I said don't choose the path of violence. That's why it wasn't. What happened last year wasn't good for anybody. Because choosing the path of violence just breeds more violence and gives people an excuse to do violence to you. If they do violence to you when you have done no violence and you've only said that which is right, God has your back, right? Trust the sword of the Lord to do your work. As far as, if there's any dirty business, let the Holy Spirit be the one who does it. Because then it's sanctified. Because he is God. And he can make decisions that men have no right to make decisions about. Except, that's why, like Psalm 82, I have said ye are gods. Judges, we ordain judges among men, just like we ordain preachers and priests and certain offices. And that's what Caesar represents, the human government, right? And the earthly things also, earthly government. And there's a certain respect to which, while we're in the world, we play by the rules. There's, Jesus paid his taxes. They make that clear. And his justification is, money and the things of this earth, it's got his name on it. So you got to pay some of that as your taxes. Well, that's part of living in society. I think there's a funny point in the movie The Life of Brian, which is a satire about the life of Christ. Some people find it offensive. It is offensive on some level, of course. It's irreverent. But I think it's an interesting critique in some points. And there's one point where, and it's also not just of Christianity, it's of Judaism. It isn't hard on Jesus, but it's a satirical take. And as a comment on religion in general, there's some useful things. But anyways, they say, what have the Romans ever done for us? I'm like, well, the roads, the aqueduct, whatever. It's like there were some benefits to being subject to an empire. Of course, they also murdered you and stuff, right? The same logic holds true today. It's like, oh, we're America. We're coming in. We're helping everybody. I mean, don't you want us in your country fixing everything? No. We can't even fix our own country. We got no business trying to fix every country in the world, much less trying to make the world some sort of uniform liberal empire. I don't want no liberal empire, okay? Not in my name, okay? I mean, I like the idea of classical liberalism, but it can't be imposed on everyone, and it's apparently it leads to some very nasty side effects. I mean, ultimately, I'm under no delusions. The ultimate kingdom is not going to be like some sort of like democracy or anything. It's a kingdom. It's like you can opt in. Many are called, but few are chosen. Don't tempt him. Don't tempt God. Just love that which is good. So he sees the penny and he does this thing where he says, he asks him the question. Caesar's render to Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and the things of God which are God's. There are things we owe God that are much more important than money. That's why I say it's like, in money also I think about, like in terms of people think like, it's just like the old times. Money, you could convert sacrifices to money. That's the problem with the money changer question. Because there's a provision in the law. So you're supposed to offer the firstlings of your flock. But if for some reason someone could not provide that, they could travel to Jerusalem for the sacrifice and then purchase something there that was appropriate. But this had turned into kind of a business of not only that, the money changers would actually change the money from Roman coin to shekels of the temple. And they would also make a profit in the changing of the money so they wouldn't use this idolatrous Roman money. But it was a profit-making enterprise. And they were selling doves and other offerings there. It was a little, there's a little business going on. And it was offensive. It was supposed to be a house of prayer. And he looked for judgment. He wants righteousness. He wants us to be willing and obedient. So if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. It's from Isaiah. How has the faithful city become as a harlot? I think that's chapter 1 even. But the point is, he desires mercy and not sacrifice. A lot of times people and preachers, they still try to convince people, God wants your money. He wants you to send your money to me, so I can have this impressive ministry and reach more people, and they can send me more money. And so I can have a big swimming pool and maybe a big nice fence around my property, maybe have a nice underground shelter bunker for myself or something. Like all these things that money and riches can buy you to save you from the wrath to come. But there's no escape of the wrath to come except to come to Jesus. It's the only escape. And you will escape the wrath to come. But I'll tell you, those found not having on a wedding garment. You want to have a wedding garment. Don't say your righteousness is as filthy rags. You're right. Your garments have been cleansed with the blood of Christ. How are they getting dirty? What, you getting your garments dirty again? These things should not be. You could be. I forgive you. In the name of Christ. But we got to do better. We got to do better. Our Lord comes. And what is he going to find? What is he going to find us so doing? So that was, God, we owe things to God, to do what's right, to obey his commandments to the utmost. That's what he really wants from us. He doesn't want our money. He doesn't want our sacrifices. Not in the sense of things that are just like, sacrifices are good in a certain sense. There's a sacrifice that I offer of myself, a living sacrifice. That's reasonable service, considering the price that was paid for me. It's just a natural outcome. I remember I used to hear people say, like, when they would explain about works, they would say, you would naturally feel very grateful. And I think that's right, but that needs to be emphasized, because I think people who might be cognizant of it are kind of lulled into this stupor of not thinking about the way they live their life as being important because of the way the gospel is preached. And the emphasis on just believing in the storyline of the Bible, like we got to believe a 6,000 year creation. Job literally happened for sure. It's like I said, I don't mind entertaining the idea that it is like a parable that someone wrote as an idea about that was inspired by God, about like a prophet received a vision of Job, or maybe there was a certain man named Job, In fact, whatever. We're going to get to that. Because it's a great and it's an important story. And Jesus covered the same topic when he encountered the man born blind. Who sinned? Him or his parents? They thought somebody sinned that he was born blind, of course, right? Bad things only happen to bad people for doing bad things. And Jesus said, nope, not for either. It was for the glory of God. And for some people, that flips their mind out. Like, why is God getting glory? Because it's in your power to glorify God, which is an amazing thing. You think about it, to bring glory to the Creator. It's like, why is that? It's like, to me, it's no worse than, to me, it's the same thing as like, I think about like my forefathers, they weren't all godly men, but some of them, I want them to be glad, I don't know, to have glory from what their descendants did. I always felt like that. Even if they weren't the, perfect people either. Like, we're the descendants of the apostles. They were fallible men. But men who learned and grew. You can see the growth of the apostles. And that's also a picture of how we go through life. We go through we got to be born again. We become like children. And like children, we have to be with that humility to be able to, like, I got to listen to mom and dad ultimately, because I totally depend on mom and dad. And God is dad. What is mom? In a sense, God is both. I remember guys talking about that. I don't think God is male and female, because God acts upon the thing. The thing is sort of the creation. Mother is sort of the earth, I suppose, or the creation itself. If heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool, we are made of the stuff of the earth. We are brought out of the womb of this earth. There's a lot that when the woman in Revelation 12, there's a lot of connections with the earth, and the earth helps the woman and opens up her mouth and swallows up the flood. There is that woman. That's the woman. We are that woman in a sense. We have a mother, which is Jerusalem. That's why Jerusalem, that city, is the mother of us all. And that's sort of like the society of the saints, our mother. And our Father is God. That's why, because the mother, it's not wrong to point to Mary as being a part of that, because she was the mother of Jesus. But again, whatever, while going down that road, I don't need to dispute with the Catholics about it as far as I'm concerned right at this moment. Because I see that as part of it. It's like that, there's mother. There's an example of the mother. And like Jesus said, who is my father, my mother, my sister? He didn't say who is my father, my mother, my sister, my brother. They asked him, who is your father? He talked about his father. God is the Father. He's the active principle. He is the creator. It's kind of like the nature of things is male and female. It's not gender. It's male and female. I've often said, I think that, whatever. God is not a man. But he is symbolically a man. But he is God, and he became a man. He became flesh. And man was made in his image. Because we are men and not God, and therefore he is God and not man. But Jesus was fully man in that paradoxical thing, that in the incarnation. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. He had been from everlasting, but he became flesh and dwelt among us. Now, that's a great summation of it. I believe in all those words. And then the Sadducees come, which say there is no resurrection. Oh, we got time to do this, yeah. And asked him, saying, Master, Moses said if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry, raising up seed. Like a lot of things, like I said, this was something that was part of tradition that goes back, that predates the Bible, I'm pretty sure. This is like an ancient tradition of probably the Hebrews that got codified into the law. They say Moses said. Right. That's written in Moses. And Jesus also had a certain attitude about the things in Moses. Like he said, I'm laying down a law and I fulfilled Moses' law. Because I'm filling in all the gaps. And also I'm Lord of the Sabbath and things like that. It's very, he sets himself apart. Moses said there would be a prophet like unto me, one who came and had the authority to turn things and to tell you this is what you need to do, to lay down the law. And we talk about that, the law of Christ, as Paul talked about it. It's funny, the 7 brethren. I wonder if they're trying to hit him with a parable, if it's symbolic of anything. 7 brothers. I had 7 sons. But this won't be necessary. It's an ancient tradition. But again, we don't follow the law. That's another thing. It's like you who will be legalistic and say, we got to follow the law of Moses to this day because you don't understand what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount about not one jot or tittle of the law would pass. Or people have sold them a bill of goods. It's unfortunate. And they descend into this legalistic trap, which is not, it's not good for your faith because it directs you to think about it in a wrong way. But, like I said, if we do right and love the Lord, I don't think you have to understand every nuance of doctrine. A lot of people don't. Just because their denomination says, oh, this is the official doctrine. I've never been able to attend a church where I agree with all their official doctrine. I'm going to say where people decide to attend church is not something I'm particularly concerned about. I know people who have communicated with me who like to go to Catholic church, but they still like to listen to my studies. And that's kind of how I grew up. My dad, we went to Catholic church, but he was not all down with the Catholic church. We eventually stopped going to the Catholic church because he didn't want me to become a Catholic. Not in the sense that they were going to make it. So they ask in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. Having no children, at the end, well, whose wife is she going to be? And it's like, well, you make the mistake. You don't know the scriptures nor the power of God. I mean, they don't understand the scriptures as far as the resurrection. The part about the power of God, I think, is referring to just the nature of the resurrection as far as what people become, that they're not normal humans anymore, but they're as the angels. Right? In the resurrection, they will not be marrying nor given in marriage, but as the angels of heaven. And this would be a good verse if you wanted to try to refute what it says in Genesis 6. And what some people there think when it talks about the sons of God seeing the daughters of men, that they were fair and taking to them, which is there's something about that passage that's definitely, more than meets the eye as far as there's something it's trying to say that goes beyond, because it just seems like, oh, well, it's just this and that. But as far as saying if it's angels, it says the angels don't marry or give in marriage. But does that mean it would be impossible for them to do, or that it's the right thing that they do? You know what I'm saying? That they do not have marital relations of any kind. I mean, they are in the angels of God, they're always portrayed as sort of beautiful young men. It's not a sexual thing, because there's greater intimacy with the Holy Spirit than carnal pleasures. Carnal pleasures is like, part of that is learning to be self-controlled and not just give oneself to every whim. Because that can't be the way the world continues. People can't be self-serving and self-pleasing at the expense of others. And also even to their own degradation, it's not acceptable. We can't continually degrade ourselves and remain in the creation with God as bearers of His image. In the world to come, we have to live in righteousness. And again, I said, we have the flesh to explain our sinful nature. What explains the evil angels? Now, I have certain explanations, but it's like, still, there are such things. Because I think the potential for evil is something that is important for us to have a firm grasp on. because with power comes responsibility, because there's potential. When you make good things, you have the power to destroy good things. You know, I used to say it more in the past, but I talk about marriage, how it's like, it is a very difficult, hard thing to do, to get along with someone and to stay close and feel affection, amidst all the troubles of life and all the failings of other human beings, to love people in spite of their flaws. If you can't love the people closest to you, and everyone's flawed. If we're looking, when you're looking for the perfect person, start with yourself. Look for the perfect version of you. And as you do that, I found when my wife tried to be bigger than me, not by some like bad thing, but I mean in a good way, and not dissent. When I had given offense, and instead of returning offense, she would just forgive me and love me. That was very inspirational to me. It made me want to do better. A lot more than when we were younger, when we would tend to go back and forth because of the hurt that one can cause another. And so how we handle ourselves in relationships and in pleasure seeking and all that stuff, it is important. We have relationships we have to look after with the Lord and all that. And it's like we can live in harmony and peace together. But there has to be a certain sort of baseline understanding of what right and wrong is and good and evil. That's why God planted the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, in my opinion, was because man had to taste it. But it's something we had, or he was willing, he's willing to let us, even though we should not. I don't know. That whole story is very interesting to me, the way that goes. Because like I said, the literal truth of it is not even the most important aspect, but it's like, what is it saying? It was like Jesus. He literally walked on water, but what did he say about that stuff? It's not just, I believe he walked on water. Well, good. That isn't the most important thing he did. I saw this video and someone was like, this guy still believes in the virgin birth. And I'm like, I thought to myself, boy, they're stuck down at that level of analysis. Like, oh, you're still worried about that. I mean, I certainly do believe in the virgin birth because I believe Christ was the incarnation of God. So he wasn't going to, whatever. And it's not even that. I mean, we could do it technologically. So it's not even that weird to me, it doesn't seem like a super duper miracle. It's just something man couldn't explain in the first century and could not do themselves. But certainly we could create a virgin birth. I mean, that's not off the, they want to make, we already have in vitro fertilization, and, it's just not used on virgins a lot of times because it's usually women who find out they can't have babies. Not that anyone should aspire to such a thing, because I think it's sort of like, it's like, that's kind of like, what are you trying to get at there? Another part about the resurrection. I gotta wrap it up here in about 5, 6, 7 minutes. Yeah, wait, actually, yeah. No, we got 10 minutes, actually. He said, but as touching the resurrection, have you not read that which was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Now again, a lot of times people say, they're alive? No, they will live in the resurrection. That's how I take it. Because they are the living, just as Christ reigns. You know what I mean? He is set down at the right hand of God, and all things are put under his feet. Now that is by decree. And as Paul said, therefore it must come to pass that we do not yet see all things put under his feet, is what he said. Yet we do not see, I think it was Paul or it was Hebrews, which might be Paul. I tend to think it is Paul, or at least partly Paul, because he was the one who had the greatest incentive to write an anonymous epistle. And almost none of we have a problem with pseudepigrapha, which means where it's someone wrote the name of an apostle, the Gospel of Thomas, and people are like, is this literally from Thomas? I mean, in a sense, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those are traditional titles. The originals didn't have those names attached to them. But and I don't think it's an important question. I don't mind having a little bit of mystery about those sort of things. Those are the least important things. It's like when people say, the Bible's changed. Which parts? Which of Jesus' teaching? It's like, what did it used to say? The dead don't rise? It's like, what did it used to say? I'm the God of the dead, you dolts? No. So, he calls things that are not as though they are. No, he is God of the living, because I am the God. To God, Abraham is not dead. Because you're not dead as far as God's concerned until he says you're dead. And then you're dead. Because he speaks things into existence. He speaks things out of existence. He kills. He makes alive. He wounds. He heals. He's the creator. He's God. And he has the righteous authority to do all those things because he's God. He can declare things. He can take away and he can give back. He can do all those things and has the right and the knowledge and the judgment to be justified in all his doings. We don't understand. Just like I said, there's things that, they think miracles break the laws of the universe. No, you just don't understand the laws of the universe. You don't know how they work. We even know we really don't know how they work. We understand how things, like Newtonian physics and stuff like that, but like down at the basic level of like the reality of the most elemental particles of the universe, still don't know exactly what's going on. Things like string theory, I hear a lot of people, I hear certain people who seem to be knowledgeable. So it was an entirely dead end. And we're just waiting. Science moves forward one funeral at a time. We're waiting for some exalted physicist to die so that the science can move forward. It's not much different than religion, folks. So, Jacob will live, I will live. Your dead men shall live. Together with my dead body shall they arise. Isaiah 26. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs. It's like you're brand spanking new. And from your perspective, you will not be like laying in the ground for centuries. When you die, the next thing you know is going to be the judgment. You'll be standing before Christ. There's no passage of time. But the resurrection it clearly happens all at once, or in two phases. According to Revelation, which I take as the final word on the resurrection, since it is the revelation. Okay. The resurrection, count on it. That's part of why we are obedient unto death. We love not our lives unto the death, because we know we should not fear them which kill the body, but rather fear him. And the things that hey, you got to pay your taxes. I filed my tax returns. And when I owe taxes, I pay my taxes. Whatever they are, I pay all kinds of taxes. I pay plenty of taxes. Don't pay a lot of income taxes because of my family size, but I still pay self-employment taxes. I got to pay car taxes, all kinds of tax. And I drive a lot of different cars over the years because I always have to fix them. And our state fees are expensive. But you got to pay it. You can't just I'm a sovereign lord of my own. It's like, hey, you're under another authority. I've always respected the authority when it needs to do what's right. And I have a right in the country to speak about it and to vote about it and do whatever I like about it within the bounds of the law and the Constitution, which is a whole lot. Plenty for me. I don't need to riot or burn anything. I'll burn it with my mouth. I'll burn it down with my words. That's good enough. That's the number one thing I hope they do is take the torch to the censorship industrial complex. That stuff has to be dismantled. And I'll be satisfied with it disappearing forever. That'll be good enough. Dealing with the censorship, it's already illegal. They should put into law penalties. Okay, so if anyone ever does this again, they go to jail. I mean, if we could just fix it so that it would become a criminal offense for the government to do this, I'd let bygones be bygones. I like to forgive and forget. Yeah, government is there to do God's work at least not to teach religion, but at least right within the realm of right and wrong, people hurting each other, disputing with each other, defrauding one another. We all kind of agree on most of the right and wrongs in society. We mostly disagree about how do we get things right. There are some things people do disagree on. But a lot of those things really aren't the realm of government and shouldn't be. Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, and so they were astonished at his doctrine. I would have liked to have gone on to do the last question, but we'll do it going in. We're not going to begin reading at the beginning of the chapter again. Like I said, it's early, but I've got to go pretty soon. And no, actually, I think I can get this in a couple. Oh, I'm going to rush the thing. Which is the greatest commandment of the law? I think I've already been talking about this, so I'm going to wrap it up talking about this, right? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. You should love God. You should. And fear him. And I use that as my model as a father. I remember when they were very young, I said, I wanted to make the children adore me and also be terrified of me. But in the sense of that they don't want to run afoul of me, because when you don't run afoul of Dad, it can be great. Things are wonderful. You know what I mean? So I try to make it, like Paul said, the goodness and severity of God. On them which fell, severity. There are certain things that are absolutely unacceptable. I taught my children that from young. With like things like lies. All these things. I made a very careful practice to try to to correct them quite severely on those things. On little stuff, ease up. Don't provoke your children. Don't make the life so full of rules and garbage that just like the washing of pots and cups. I could get ticked off about kids leaving dishes all over the place. You know what I mean? Or stuff like that. Hey, nothing wrong with teaching people to be considerate and picking up after themselves. But it's not the kind of thing you want to lose your cool over. Because life is, the life is more than the body is more than raiment. The body is more than food, the body than raiment. Yeah. Is not the life more than meat, the body than raiment. The life is not meat, the body is not raiment. Food and clothing are not all there is to life. And people get all worried about having nice clothes, having delicious food. I like my good food. But there are much more important things in life. There are much more important things. Raising your children, a good father in the home helps children understand God. When people who have a bad relationship with God, I often find they had some really tyrannical religious father, which is really unthinkable to me. I mean, I am a tyrant. No doubt. I'm a tyrant. But I'm a benevolent tyrant. Like, I always look at my tyranny as the goal of my tyranny is to make them all as successful as possible in whatever they do. I mean, that's my goal, is to lift them up and to make them strong, because that brings glory to me. And that's the same thing with you and God. And you should love God because he can help you. He can do these things. He loves righteousness, the righteous Lord. When people say, what about when God did this? Or what about when God did that? It's like, you don't know the scriptures. Okay, let me just start with that. Just like Jesus said, people think they know the scriptures. They read stuff out of context. They haven't studied the thing. They don't know what they're talking about. You don't know how to read the Bible. You don't know what you're reading. I mean, those people. Okay. The first and the great commandment, and of course, to love your neighbor as yourself. Like the apostles said, how can you love God who you've never seen when you don't love your neighbor, who you see every day, maybe? I threw in there every day. But, you have people before you. If you're miserable to your family, that's why it was Paul, who said that if a man take not care of those of his own house, he's denied the faith. It's worse than an infidel. And just because you say you believe stuff, but then you treat your family like garbage, beat your kids for stupid reasons, and don't take heed to what Jesus, think that they're somehow just your pawns to beat up on, instead of, to be treated like the way you want God to lift you up? Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord like a child, and he will lift you up. I mean, that's the thing. And so loving your neighbor as yourself is an important part of that, because it's like, and they have your own house and your neighbor. You know what Jesus said about who is your neighbor? You know what the answer to that question is? Who is your neighbor? It's that guy who hates you, especially when he's in need. The people that hate you. That's why, because who is the Samaritan? Who? Because like I said, in the parable, you gotta understand that the assumption is the man who's wounded along the road, that the Levite passed by and the priest passed by. He's presumed to be a Hebrew. They never say like, ooh, a Gentile. No, he's a Hebrew, and his own people totally don't care. But the Samaritan treats him with compassion, in spite of the fact that at that time the Jews hated the Samaritans. And the Samaritans are an excellent analog for the Muslims. If you think about the story of how they came to be, you know, after the expulsion of the Jews in the time of the Babylonian or the Assyrians brought in these people from these different regions, from Babylonia and all these other foreigners. Remember, Abraham was from Babylonia too, by the way. The general area, Akkad. When he was in Mesopotamia before he came to Haran. Okay, he was in Mesopotamia. So he was a man of that same region. He came out of that culture. They're not any different than the Hebrews. Same people, basically. Just more distant cousins. They're the neighbors. You know, Amalek was destroyed. No more Amalek. Jesus. Nobody said to treat the Samaritans like they were Amalek. They just didn't worship God right. You know, they didn't have it right. Oh boy. But like Jesus said, the publicans and the harlots go into the kingdom of God before you, because they repented. Doesn't matter. And the Samaritans too. A Samaritan who does good, you know, God has more respect to they that do good than those that talk the right words. Talking the right words is one thing, but doing the right thing is it's the next part. If your mouth is writing checks, your deeds can't pay, you've got to remedy that. I know that from experience. On these 2 commandments hang all along the prophets. And he was testing him, but apparently this test was more of, it seems less benevolent. He wanted us just, can he answer, I guess. I don't see an immediate trap. Oh, and then he says the thing about, we're going to leave this next part because I really got to go. We'll just save that last part for tomorrow. We'll just comment on that. It's not a huge thing. We've talked about this before, but there's enough. And then tomorrow I'll have this, what we've just studied pretty well in mind. I'll be able to draw us back into it, I think, without having to read that whole chapter again. And that way we can go into chapter 23. We'll want to read all of that at the beginning. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Looking forward to be back again tomorrow for another study. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
Stand paralyzed with fear. Cry ye out and cry. They are drunk, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yahweh has poured upon you the spirit of stupefactation, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets, the rulers, the seers have he filled, and the whole vision is become to you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that has learned, saying, read this, please. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that has not learned, saying, read this, please. And he saith, I am not learned. For as much as this people draw near me